I have read in the paper roughly 8 lakhs jobs are needed till 2015. If you consider broadband, our friend from MTS is there. The requirement of the wireless technology, mostly evolution is on the telecom and broadband is there. So the requirement for the IPv6, which is latest, which is needed to be done from IPv4 to IPv6, there is a requirement of close to around 7 lakhs is needed by 2015. So what kind of expectation from the industry is there? Unless otherwise they come to the academia and it knows, they also should understand what is the course curriculum when they are deciding it. We need the one step forward from the industry to come and join with the academia so that we will also be evolved.
Right.
What Mr. Deepak was telling is that how we will bridge the gap, who will bell the cat first. So this is the requirement known to the industry and known to, so academic is definitely is in a position to come one step forward. Would like to closely work with the industry, unless otherwise we need a collaborative agreement, collaborative discussions. So we at our university, Sharda, since I am representing Sharda, we have got excellent traction with both with the industry and academia. So when we are designing our new courses, the industry stalwarts, industry leaders are part of our board of studies when we are making our own design, our own culture,
right,
our own course curriculum. So one is that when you are bringing out the technical skills, the industry requirement expectation, that should be imbibed into the course material.
Okay.
So number one. So number two is that once it is done, will it be okay? No. So theoretically, people may be knowing, we have got summer internships, we have got internships. Normally, every organization industry-wise, we have got 6 weeks is there. Minimum 6 to 8 weeks is the standard pattern in any of the, engineering is 6 to 8 weeks, in management around 6 weeks, depends upon that. So what is generally happening, when some of the organizations, we send them, because few days back, I am also from the industry, I am telling you what the fact is. So when we send the people summer intern, or intern some project specifically, initially to 6 to 8 weeks, physical work will be going to be 3 to 4 weeks. The person concerned, the manager concerned has been assigned. HR will give a letter, so and so person will come, so and so university, you have to train. That person will come immediately and he will say that he has to come and join. So he will join on the first day. So you have to go through, this is the circular which is given, so 1 week you have to follow. So they will give that sheet and this young boy will come, they will not even told what to be done. This boy has just come from the acceptance and you have to give the training for them. What happens in the industry, people initially summer training means physically they are not giving the training. They say that you read our corporate manual, you read this book and complete this project, and after that end of the day, so some of the assignments which are being given,
you need to see if it's followed seriously and it needs to be an ongoing process.
They are saying that you please do this project, my boss is calling.
Right.
So the project is that they are coming for a training to learn the subject matter. So the industry also should come forward. These boys, we can take advantage of them, give them the productive work for the 6 to 8 weeks. If we could talk to the people concerned, academia is ready to extend the timeline.
Right.
If a project is given. So that is the way technical skill can be when the practical skill can be upgraded upon. Third, so when you are giving that, so extending the time from 6 to 8 weeks, 2 stretches it can be done.
Right.
One is that initially in organization which you are going for 1 or 2 weeks, 6 weeks or something like that. So then we'll come back, he knows what is, where we are within the industry, come back to that course, specify that in the curriculum. That is the way I am telling that subject matter also to be put in the course. So he will choose that specific in the 4th year specialization, he will go related to that industry. Well, for 300, 200 hours, 400 hours course will be complete credit course. Once it is done, he is ready. He can go back, again do a project. Then after, it can be paid, the amount and remuneration can be paid or non-payable also, depends on that. So he will be ready, he can be really be utilized. That's the way
so people are ready to take the steps, but it needs to be done at a more serious and ongoing level.
It should be a concerted effort. It should both industry also come one step forward.
And we'll talk about that in detail, Mr. Sastry. Vlad, I just wanted to get your point of view inside as well. Your company's been in India for about 5 years. What are the issues that you're facing when it comes to entry-level employees?
Well, I wouldn't say that we have huge experience of hiring the grades, the postgraduates. But we definitely put our efforts on hiring the new talents, the youngsters, as we might put them. And specifically, let me just share a little bit of the experience of the country I came from. I'm from St. Petersburg, Russia. I spent my time, in this country as well as I work with Americans, with Western Europe, with Eastern Europe. Back at home, we put a lot on the generation that we're talking about, the people below, 35. Even the president of MTS Group that time, 11 billion or 9 billion US dollar turnover company was only 34 years old. So you can imagine, the level of the people, who were running the company at the time. So there was a lot of efforts for us, looking for the youngsters. We came to the country. We understood that it would be very hard to attract anybody from the other telecom companies unless you're really looking for the people who could not, for whatever reason, realize their potential. So I would say that we met quite a few.
Right.
Those people who went out from the large organizations saying that we would like to start something new, build it up to ensure that we get the chance, really execute. And because of the smaller scale, there were not that many layers of the manager who would tell you why it couldn't be done. And it says like, okay, fine. If you already take responsibility, take it. That helped me, in the very beginning, to attract, talents. However, the challenges, if you ask me about, I would, slightly repeat what have been said, very shortly. Cultural fit, yes. But I think it's not only about the academia, it's not about the high schools. Probably it needs to start with the family. And, overall social shift that the country is going through will help us to understand what is the future for the country. The challenges that I really have is the ability to do multitasking. Very often, maybe my colleagues will support me there. Every single task, people say we need a person to do that. It's very hard to convince the people that you can do a few things at the same time and look at the things cohesively. This is one of the challenges probably where I really would like to get the help from the respected audience. The fundamental knowledge, the education of physics, history, mathematics, really needs to widen up the horizon for the people. They need to think in kind of 3D rather than 2D. And for me, it's very often a challenge to explain that kind of approach. Financial knowledge, critical, because in the end of the day, we're all in business. If people don't understand the basic stuff, it's very hard to explain where they are. And the sense of the ownership. It's something that probably we need to be kind of born with and then educated and trained. Well, I think that for youngsters, very rightly said that there's not that many job opportunities, but where I see the chance, especially for the younger people, not that many companies gonna grow, or let's say achieve the status where you come up, you join them and start climbing on the ladder. It's more about creating the market under you. You are number one, and then see what is the chance, new niches, right? New opportunities, new businesses. Who's gonna start them? That kind of talents that I'm looking for with entrepreneurial skill set, saying, hey, give me the chance, to take my ownership, right. Work hard and create it for me. And the final thing is the teamwork. Quite interesting that so many people who know how to manage, and there are probably quite few how to collaborate. So the teamwork is a skill that never will be out of enough, and the more we can participate here, the better.
Right. Nishcha, as Vlad was pointing out, it's interesting to see that the mass of our population is between 25 to 35 years, and we're not doing enough to actually see them progress and grow. What really is your understanding of the attrition levels? Because you look at people and change management closely. I mean, is there any sort of reason behind these high attrition levels? Is it purely higher pay? Is it, seeking better work-life balance? What exactly is it that makes them move on in a matter of 1 to 1.5 years?
Let me step back before I answer that question directly. I think there is a problem with the ecosystem. And when we look at the ecosystem, it's essentially the relationship between production and consumption and the inefficiencies there. Now, the industry and academia share the relationship of production and consumption. and there are inefficiencies built in at all levels. Plus the environment itself is causing further stress within this relationship. Couple of points that were raised. If you improve the quality of production, will it enhance consumption? So for example, if you start producing better quality talent, will that itself lead to further generation of jobs? Foregone conclusion is yes, because that's the premise of which production and consumption works on. Two, if you actually looked at India as a country, it isn't a foregone conclusion, and I think we jump to a foregone conclusion that we have a problem. We don't understand the severity of the problem. There are reasons to believe that talent scouting, which is defining of talent and understanding of talent itself, is limited within our country. So if you asked anybody to define talent in this room or in the panel, they would all define talent in their own, to their own requirements. And that itself is not creating a standard for educational institutes to work with. When you look at our own ability to recruit good talent, and when I say good talent, you can define talent in the way Rajiv did, which was intellectual capacity and which essentially is cognitive and technical abilities, and then you've got emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. There are very few people in the country, and given that we recruit a lot of people, but there are still very few people in the country that have the ability of actually identifying good talent through whichever means or methods that they're using to interview. There is a gentleman called Abhijit Bhaduri, who's a friend of mine, who's the chief learning officer from Wipro. And he wrote a book, Don't Hire the Best, essentially hire for attitude. The question is, how do you create that fitment that was being spoken of in terms of values and motivation? And if you're not able to get that fitment right to begin with, it is going to create challenges, whether it's a period of a year or a year and a half, because a period of a year is essentially when you start seeing dissonance between your own so-called value systems and that of the organization, and that leads to a separation where the individual then starts looking for a job elsewhere. Plus the amount of time being spent by recruiters in this assessment of fitment itself is questionable. The way recruiters would usually shortlist, for example, is on the basis of grades, which is largely analytical intelligence. And therefore you've missed 2/3 of the individual and only focused on 1/3 of the individual, which itself is in a way limiting, because it's defined talent to be good with a kind of skill rather than a plethora of skills that should be actually evaluated. So I think we should be cautious not to conclude that we have a problem, because we don't understand, and there may be a problem, but we don't know the severity of the problem. Our talent scouting itself is an issue. We don't understand,
So your question is very basics. Now it throws up another debate about skill versus attitude, and it also becomes subjective as to which kind of a person suits that job.
There is one very relevant thing which is coming out. You asked about 1 year people moving and all that. I tell you about Maruti. The guy who spends 3 years, his chances of retention in Maruti will be high, very high. And a guy who spends 5 years with Maruti, he is likely to stay for 20, 30 years there. Now this is very interesting. So shall we unnecessarily clone the youngsters that they start thinking of staying with us when they join for lifetime employment?
But you need to make
leave it to them. And then whether it's an attitude issue or whether it's a skill issue, let us look at a bit more experience in light of what is happening.
But don't you believe the company also has a role to play in terms of the brand that you build during campus recruitment? Do you get it across to the entry-level staff that they play an important role in the organization, even at that level?
Somewhere when we were looking at this 1 year attrition thing, I just wanted to talk that first of all, do you go for campus hiring once in a year, or you have a relationship with the institutes across the year? That's one key question. What you do for the community in the academia and the students throughout the year. We very strongly believe there has to be a total relationship. It cannot be once a year interview, you just go and start picking up as if you are buying from a shop.
Right.
Second, to a great extent, we bring in 6 personal touch points on the onboarding process. So we pick up our fresh guys from railway stations, from airports and from bus stations along with their parents most of the time, and that's a very pleasant surprise for them because they never expected this kind of a personal touch. And therefore, to a great extent, our loss in first year has come down over these years to 12.5% from 52% 10, 12 years back. 12.5% young people not clear in their mind, I think it's reasonably fine. And I would not like to really make it 0 or any such thing because that much churn for the youngsters is quite considerable.
Right.
So to a great extent, yes, there is a role of corporates of proactively establishing this relationship and creating an environment which can help them develop this aptitude, attitude and capability all put together. Because I don't think we should be really looking at people that we bring from the institute and up and running and they start producing multiple crores of turnover from day one. I think that's not the right
Precisely, I
time.
think that's expecting too much. Would you say, I mean, Tarun, you have access to a huge
we've been,
database.
doing these conclaves for the last 1 year at the Times Group and TimesJobs. And, you know, we've had multiple sessions. We have panelists here who are repeats also. Interestingly, between sessions, the ball is actually dropping. Like you said that you have adopted NITs and you're actually giving back to the academia. The same conversation of challenge continues as to where is the gap, am I taking the step or are you taking the step? But that bridge is still missing for most of the companies. So more often than not, you know, our job is to actually communicate out into the open that there is still a challenge there. Our job is to actually connect, but the industry itself will have to, between those forums, take those XY steps to actually bridge it. Now, for example, there are two topics coming out. One is obviously less jobs, more supply. One is obviously the softer aspects of maybe the temperament of a person. Is that something that academia can address? Now, for example, the last semester, for example, can be an internship. Skilling is an issue which can be bridged. But assessing that person, whether he'll stick on in the organization for 1 year, 2 years, what is his temperament, how would you want academia to address that? Or is that something that the corporate itself has to take care of while they're recruiting? And how much time they're spending on every single individual as a capital asset when they're recruiting?
I think the role of the institute and the role of the industry is essentially one of continuity.
Exactly.
Right? And the seeding takes place somewhere. Now, the question is, the seeding has to take place actually earlier than even probably in school, in K-12 rather than once you reach an MBA institute. I would believe that an individual that is self-aware has the chances of making a better choice vis-a-vis one that isn't. And there isn't enough done in school and further on in education that helps an individual understand his own gifts or abilities and how those could be honed and applied in the right environment. And the chances of then, you know, attrition disappearing and a person being successful and creating more jobs in the country because